We're here at the California Antiquarian Book Fair, February 8th, 2020, in Pasadena, lovely Pasadena, with the one, the only, Taylor Bowie.
Hello, everybody.
And you've been in the seat quite a few times, Taylor, but now we want to hear your story.
Well, that's great. I've done about 25 interviews with people and enjoyed it very much, so I'm ready to talk.
Your story is one that definitely needs to be told, and you're the best one to do it. So, we're going to start at the very beginning. Where'd you grow up? Where were you born?
Born and raised in Seattle, third generation Seattleite, and I still live there, and I'm a real stick in the mud, stay at home. The longest I've ever been away from Seattle was 2.5 months when I was 8 years old. So Seattle through and through.
That's beautiful. It's gotcha.
It does.
You went to, all your school, you stayed there for high school, for college? How did?
My high school was a place called Lakeside School, which some people may have heard of because it's the alma mater of Bill Gates and Paul Allen, who were both a little bit behind me, but I knew them both at the time and thought they were both pretty goofy, especially Bill. I could still see him at the primitive computer, which was down in the chem lab in the basement of the building, and how preposterous! How could anybody, with a nice sunny day, how could anybody be spending their time at that thing? But he had his reasons.
Apparently so.
Yes, he did.
Apparently so.
So I graduated from Lakeside, barely, and attended the University of Washington for about 5 years and then gave up. Now, from the time I was 13, which was 1966, I worked in bookshops part-time. Right. And the first job I had was a long-gone place called the Philippi Book and Record Shop up in the Capitol Hill neighborhood at Melrose and Olive. And they sold both old books, which was the husband's department, and old records, which was the wife's department. And that's why I went to work there, because I had started a little record collection, and it was the only store in town that sold 78s. So one Saturday, after spending my pathetic allowance there, I said, is there any chance I could have a job here on Saturdays? I'd spend all the money here.
Yeah.
And so that's how it started. Actually, it was, 54 years ago this month.
Oh my God. Yeah. That's amazing.
February 1966. So I worked there Saturdays and sometimes in the summer for about 3 years. And the time I went to the university, I worked at a little store right by campus, a little paperback place run by a unhappy bipolar woman, and you never knew if she was going to be happy or sad, and all the employees were always on edge. That was no fun. And then a friend of my mother's knew I was going to be a freshman at the university that fall, the fall of '70, and she had a bookstore in Seattle, a little one that she'd been running a couple of years. She and her husband were going off to Africa. They're doing field work, anthropology over there. And they needed somebody to run her little store. Why they needed it, I don't know, but she wanted somebody to run her little store part-time while she was away, so she picked on me for some reason, I guess because she knew, I was 17 or 18, and she knew I'd worked in stores.
Yeah, lucky.
So
lucky her.
Here I am, I'm a freshman at the university, and I wasn't really very focused on studies. The first night after class, a friend and I went out and split 5 pitchers of beer. I've hated beer ever since, so I missed my second day of classes at the university because I was hungover. But I never missed going to run the little bookstore 3 afternoons a week and all day Saturday. And so I did that for that first year while still going to school. I had a customer at that little store, a fellow named David Ishi, who some of your viewers, if you aren't watching this too many years in the future, some of your viewers may remember him. Yeah. Wonderful guy who had a little shop in Seattle. He'd become eligible to get some kind of government minority loan or something like that. He was of Japanese extraction. And he'd lost his job in advertising. He wanted to have a bookstore, except he didn't know anything about books. Well, I didn't know much, but I knew more than he did. And he hired me when my little job, part-time job, ended that fall to come to work for him part-time to buy books, to put his little store together. So I did that, and the store opened the next January. And I worked for him part-time till 1974.
What kind of books were you buying back then?
Really the kind I still buy. I've always been a complete generalist. And I've always been one, if a book appeals to me, I tend to make this sort of arrogant assumption that if I like it, somebody else will like it too. And I've noticed myself over the years, when I have a book that I really am not interested in or excited about, it's very hard for me to sell it. I can't make any kind of pitch. I think, oh, this is very rare. It's house number A23, and it's very important because but if it's something that perks me up, then
everybody senses it.
Yeah, they do.
You get the particles too excited.
Yeah, that's right.
It flies off the shelf.
That's right, it does. So I was still going to the university part-time.
Okay.
And as I said, I was not very focused. I was a wild child. And in September of 1974, I sort of had this epiphany that it was time to go.
Okay.
And within the space of 2 weeks, I quit going to the university. I never got a degree. And I quit my job with David Ishi, and I went to work driving a taxi, which I will be honest, I was very good at.
Really?
And I had a fabulous time. Wow. Full-time for 2 years. I mean, I love the book trade, but I've never had the intense, fun feeling that I had those 2 years driving cab. It was just an adventure every day. I met some incredible people, some not so nice people.
Sounds like a book fair.
Yeah, it does. Sounds like this book fair. And I loved it. I never got tired of it. I would help out in dispatch just for free because I was in dispatch so much they finally put me on the payroll in dispatch. You're here every day. We might as well pay you something.
I'm seeing a pattern. I'm seeing a pattern in your life. Yeah.
Yeah, my enthusiasms carry the day usually, whether they're good or bad. So in August or July of 1976, I'm in the point where I'm thinking that maybe I'm going to buy a cab of my own and drive, full time, and maybe have a night driver, this kind of thing like people did back then. I get a phone call from my prior ex-boss, David Ishi, the bookseller, and he said, you need to call Nora Ottenberg. Now, she was the woman who owned the little store that I ran part-time while she and her husband were in Africa. Yes.
Right.
She had had cancer some years before. Anyway, she'd had a recurrence of this brain cancer, and there was no hope. And she wanted me to buy her store.
Oh my gosh.
And I wasn't sure for a while, but then I thought, well,
that's quite a fork in the road.
That is. And I thought maybe this will have, more continuity. Anyway, I tossed it around for about a week.
Okay.
And she wanted $10,000 down payment. So I got my parents to cough up half of that.
Okay.
And I coughed up the rest, and I went ahead and did it on, we signed the papers on August 1st, 1976.
You sealed the deal.
The day before my 24th birthday.
Oh my gosh. How much was a cab going to be? I got to ask.
That's a good question. A cab medallion back, I honestly don't know. But, I was doing great for the mid-'70s. I was, taking home like $2,500 a month from the cab, and my apartment was like $200.
Whoa!
So I was doing just fine.
Balling.
The first month, I took over this very beautiful shop space that she just moved into in June, right about the time she found out she was not going to be around very long. So it was all fresh and remodeled in a pretty building with a terracotta facade, and it was really nice. About 700, 800 square feet. I didn't know squat what to do. I didn't know anything about running a business, really. I knew something about books, but there was no way to cheat back then. You couldn't go on the internet. And so, I'm always calling up people that I thought might know a little bit more than I did. So the first month I'm in business, I grossed $3,000. And I wasn't sure if that was good or bad or what it was, but it was all I could manage. And I think, well, if I could gross $3,000 a month, so the next month I grossed under $2,000.
Uh-oh.
So for several years, I really just flailed around until I got any kind of rhythm. And one of the things that helped me was when out-of-town dealers would come in to scout. And back then, in the late 70s, 80s, dealers were traveling around all the time looking for books. I'd have people from California, people from the Midwest, people from back east, people from Australia.
Wow.
My first big dealer sale was to a guy from Australia who just walked in one day and introduced himself and spent $500. And, my shop rent was $250. So
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I'm with you. I'm good. In 1981, my tenants told me that they weren't going to renew my lease because they needed the space for their own activities. So I started looking around, and that year was when I first thought about joining the ABAA. I was really nervous. I wasn't sure I was up to snuff for it, but I'd gotten to know several people, who were and are well known in the trade, and I got them to sponsor me. I should backtrack a little bit that the first Seattle Book Fair, which I participated in but did not run, was in 1978. Very small thing, about 30 dealers in a fancy hotel ballroom. It was nice.
And here you are, a new shop owner. You've been at it for a year or two.
A year and a half, 2 years.
And
but I had some terrific inventory that I'd acquired with the collection. So I remember setting up this book fair in 1978, and Lou Weinstein and a guy named David Worship, who used to be in the trade, they were first in line to come into the fair. And they denuded my booth of these perfect condition 1920s and 30s modern firsts that I'd acquired. And they were perfect jacket. So that was a good boost for my ego and to get to know some of these people. So in late 81, and I'm going to be having to move, that's when I decided to apply for ABA membership. And two of my sponsors are still two of my best friends in the trade, were Peter Stern, who's my main sponsor, and Ken Carmiel. By the way, I just reminded Ken the other day that he and I have known each other now for 48 years.
oh my gosh.
Because I first met him when I was working for David Ishi in 1972,
Yeah.
and he was working for Heritage,
Oh my gosh.
and they were sending him up and down the coast and traveling. So
That's a long, good
that's a long
friendship.
time. So getting into the ABAA really woke me up, and there's a certain amount of luck. I stumbled into an extraordinary collection of books that had been donated to a library up in Alaska.
Okay.
They didn't know what to do with them, and the odd thing was that there were scores of duplicates. This guy was very focused on what he collected, and he wasn't content just to buy one copy. He would buy as many as he could find, hoping to find variations, bibliographic variations. Well, usually there weren't,
Right.
but he never would get rid of the books. So
Doing his own little personal census.
he did, and so they hired me to help them make the selection for the collection, and then also to dispose of the duplicates. So I load up on this great stuff from them just in time for my first fair out of Seattle, which was in Los Angeles. I mean, I still think of this as the Los Angeles Book Fair, even though it's Pasadena, but it's the LA Book Fair to me. And that was 1982, back at the much missed Ambassador Hotel. I loved it so. And the best book I had at that fair was The House Beautiful by William Gannett, which is the first book that Frank Lloyd Wright created. He did all the designs and illustrations for it. Small edition, possibly 90 copies, although they say it's probably only 50. I think it's 1894. And I was so in love with that book. And I remember I knew that some dealer had had a couple copies over the previous years, $3,500. And I thought, I don't know nothing, but I don't think that's enough for that book. So I priced it $6,500. And I remember when the fair opened, it's hard to believe I ever had anything that was the talk of the fair, but people were talking about my $6,500 book in two ways. What a great book it was and how overpriced it was. I remember the late Irving Zucker, who was quite a character. He looked at it and he opened it in such a way I was afraid he was going to crack the hinge. And he looked at it for a while and he slammed it shut, put it back and says, I'd rather buy a Picasso etching. I thought, oh, okay, that's fine. I'll go ahead and do. And another dealer who I still know, in fact, who's visiting the fair here, still very fond of this person. This person closed the book and pushed it to me and said, well, it's a very nice book, Taylor, but you'll never sell it at that price. So the second day of the fair, a fellow from Texas came in, a dealer who was buying a lot of stuff for University of Texas. And very politely, he asked to see the book. And he sat in the corner. He went through this book leaf at a time, leaf at a time, leaf at a time. And he said, well, it's a very nice book. I'm prepared to offer you $4,800, which is like $400 less than the trade discount.
Yeah.
And I was surprised. I said, no, 20% is all I can give. And he says, well, I'll get back to you. And then he called me at the hotel the next day and took the book.
The book.
But looking back, I mean, here I was, potentially blowing a huge sale for me just because I loved that book and I just didn't want to give any more slack on it.
That's incredible.
So it was. And by the end of that fair, remember I have a shop where the rent is like, at that point, still $300, $350,
right.
Something like that. And I did $14,000.
Oh.
I just friggin' could not believe it. And I had never in my life, I mean, when I was driving cab, I'd seen occasionally somebody would have a $100 bill for a big fair. I had never seen so many $100 bills. I mean, people just, and I think that was the fair where some guy came in and he bought like a $200 horse book. And he pushed it, he says, well, I've been at fair both yesterday and today and I haven't bought anything yet and I have to buy something. And I said, well, you'll get no argument from me. So I flew back to Seattle and really I felt like I had the wind at my back. And,
you did.
So I stayed in this little space I'd reserved, which was getting ready for me in January and early February. So I come back from the book fair to my new shop, which is a small space on Fifth Avenue. People still remind me about it. And I tried to make it look like a little junior version of John Howell Books in San Francisco with the walls. And I even had a rolling ladder made, a freestanding rolling ladder. And it was the last part of the thing that I paid for. And I still remember it was $866.10, which was a lot of money.
That's a lot of money.
I still have the ladder in storage.
It's a lot of money now.
I don't know what to do with it, but I can't get rid of the ladder. I still love it.
You can't.
So I stayed in that space till 1990, and then some major things happened. So perhaps you should interrupt me, or do you want me to just continue?
I could. You're telling it. You're telling it, Taylor. You want to talk about those major things?
Well, it was definitely a major change in 1989 and 90. As I said, I was never a particularly good money manager, business manager, but I got to the point where I could, take care of things properly. But it was learned by doing, and I'd gotten to be very friendly with the bookseller Dick Weatherford, who was originally from here, but was teaching back at Ohio State at Columbus. Anyway, one of those big colleges back there. But he's also running a mail order book business. So I'd done some business through the mail and got to know him that way. And then he let me know that he was relocating back out to Seattle, which he did sometime in the mid-'80s. So I got very friendly with him. And in 1989, we were just talking, and we came up with the idea of opening a big, all-encompassing kind of used and antiquarian bookstore. And we talked about it quite a while, and I thought, this is perfect for me. Here's a guy that has complete business sense, knows how to do something, and all I'll have to do is do the fun part.
Buying.
So we opened our big shop in Pioneer Square in March or April of 1990. And it was 2 levels. I mean, it was huge. Rent was very high. But my God, from the day it opened, I was just stunned. We were doing, that first 2 years, we did $1,000 a day through the door.
Wow.
Through the door.
Through the door.
Yeah, not counting library and dealer and mail order sales. We put out little monthly lists. It was just extraordinary, and I'm just happy as a clam. And then in September of 91, Dick and I are in the office together, and he says, "Oh, I'm leaving the business." And I said, he said, "Yeah, I'm leaving the business. There's a new thing, I think it was called back then faxing or something like that. And it has to do with the computer, using the computer in the book trade for matching." Anyway, I'm listening to all this shit, and I don't know what he's talking about. All I hear is that he's leaving, and I have to buy him out, which I didn't want to do. So here I am, running this giant thing, which I don't want to run, still with my, well, anyway, I didn't want to have to do that, but
Yep. It's not what you signed up for.
but I didn't have much choice because he's going to go. So we worked out a deal, and I was on my own, and I kept that thing going for till the end of '98. And actually, I closed it in February of '99, and the neighborhood changed, the book trade changed, everything. The through the door stuff,
Started declining,
like
right?
zip. Where it got to be if you did $100 through the door. Oh, really? Well, that's good. And the gross of the last year, total gross for the business, and this is with increased mail order and everything, was about a third of the huge, I'm embarrassed to say the amount, the huge gross we had that first year. Wow. No, I'm not embarrassed. I mean, people are going to be seeing this 50 years from now. They're not going to care. That first year, the 11 months, we did over $1 million.
Oh my God.
Nobody would sneeze at that now, but this is like 1990.
Yeah.
This is like 30 years ago.
Holy smokes.
And like a lot of dummies, I just thought it was going to
Last forever?
No, it didn't. But I was still staying in touch with Dick, with the progress, because he went from this fax on to, what the hell, fax and interlock, something, and then finally Alibris. And he's telling me all about Alibris, and it's going to be this.
And this is just a strange word to you.
Yeah.
Are you starting to understand some of what
Oh, yes.
this means for the trade and for moving stock?
Yeah, Dick set us up so that we could list books.
Yeah.
And I actually learned how to do catalog entry and things that I didn't want to do, but I learned how to do it.
Yeah.
But I'm really getting tired of running this big store. I have
Yeah.
payroll, I have taxes, I have rent, which I cut back to just the main floor, but towards the end I was still paying $5,000 a month rent.
Woo.
And I'm just done with this. And Alibris was kind of kicking into the next year. And I asked Dick, I said, I know you're doing all this buying. Is there any way you could hire me as a buyer? Because that's all I like to do.
Yeah.
And he said, well, I think so. And there's this back and forth, and flew down there to meet with the big poops in Emeryville. And one of the big poops came up to Seattle to visit with me, and we hit it off well. Then I went down, and
You were big stuff. The big poops came to you.
well, the first time they did, maybe they were coming up anyway to see Dick. But I went down to the Bay Area, the corporate office there in Emeryville.
Okay.
And before I knew it, well, the first thing I said, well, you know, we'd like to give you a job. How much do you want? So I just said the first thing that came to mind. And they said, oh, that's fine. And I said, oh, shoot, I should have.
Oh.
But that's all right, it was fine.
And what'd you do?
I was
What did it
ready to
look
go.
like?
And I said, okay, the other thing is that in order to close my business, I need $125,000.
Okay.
And they said, okay. And I said, and I will give you my books. And that's what they said, okay, I'll just give you my books.
Yeah.
I want the money. It's not for the books necessarily. It's just, I need this money to pay off bills and shit. And I said, and I also have a lot of ephemera and prints and stuff I really like. And they said, oh, we don't want that. Just keep that. Okay. That was all right. I was happy.
Bueno.
So off the books go, and February 1st, I think I started with them, and it was very exciting. I had an expense account. I asked them, what am I supposed to do? And I said, buy books. And I said, well, what sort of books? All kinds of books, and a lot of them, and we need them now.
Whoa.
So I had this like basically unlimited budget.
Wow.
I mean, I had more money to spend than probably anybody in the book trade those first couple of years. And I spent it like crazy. And a lot of what I spent that first year was buying out dealer stocks or the stuff they had in storage, but on a number of occasions, their entire store. And I remember I paid very generously because they needed the books. But the more you buy and the more you have, and then you begin to see, well, you know, I really don't need a 10th copy of that. So the offers on a lot of stuff went down, but people were still taking them if they were smart.
Yeah.
Several times, though, I would make an offer on something, say, oh, that's insulting. I couldn't possibly take that. I said, that's fine. I don't care. And then a year later, oh, Taylor, I've decided I'll sell you the books on English royalty. I said to this particular fellow, I'm sorry, I don't want them now.
Dead and gone.
That's, you know, we've got so much of that stuff, you know, you're out of luck. Glad you paid the storage for another year to have them. So this went on and on. After the first year, though, I'm told, they were also flying me down to Emeryville all the time. God, I got so sick of that Oakland airport and that awful, I'm blanking on, Southwest Airlines. God, I just cattle call, at least twice a month round trip, plus the other traveling I was doing.
Wow.
For all these meetings, which near as I could tell accomplished nothing, but I learned all the like corporate lingo about, oh, we're on the same page and that. I still use that.
Close this loop.
Yeah, geez, all that stuff. So after the first year, they said, oh, well, we're going to cut your salary. I said, oh, shit. But we're going to change it so you get a commission for every book you send us, which they're paying for. For every book you send us that we can list, we're going to give you 50 cents.
Okay.
And I thought, oh, I don't know. I was really anxious. Crap, my pay for the next 2 years was a third more
Oh my gosh.
than what I've been getting a salary.
Than what you've been getting.
So, plus, I didn't have to argue with the bookkeepers about where I stayed, because they wanted me to like to stay in places I like to stay, and I didn't have to like rent the little tiny cars. I could rent the large sedan that I wanted because I was paying for it myself.
Right.
But no, I
do it your way.
But in September of 2001, October, you know, right around the time of 9/11, I'm really getting sick of this job because I've gotten to where I say, oh, here's that pile of books. Yeah, I'll take those.
Yeah.
You know, here's the money.
Here's the money.
Pack them up, send them. And I can remember the day I bought this huge accumulation of books from a warehouse in South Seattle. Some crazy guy thought he was going to have a bookstore someday, like they all do. And he had to leave the warehouse. And so I hauled in a big dumpster for the garbage and all the other stuff. And we had a regular deal with trucking companies to pack the crap off to Sparks, Nevada. So the second installment of this huge warehouse was this large barn out in North Seattle. It was a barn, but it was in the city.
Okay.
But it was on this kind of weird little road. It's a friggin' barn. And it was filled with awful books.
Oh.
But I thought, well, I'm here. I might as well start looking for it. So I looked through it, and I did find a Asian American telephone directory from about 1940.
Ooh.
Which
cool stuff.
Since it was ephemera, I didn't send it to him. I took care of it myself. But I spent about a day and a half in that barn. And I just thought, God, Jesus, I don't want to do this anymore. I'm sick of this shit with mounds of books and pallets and, turn rates and culls and sick of having to go to Emeryville twice a month for boring meetings. And about 3 weeks later, I was still plodding along doing stuff. I get a call from my presumed supervisor there, and he tells me that Alibris is eliminating the buying position, that they're going more to the model of being a lister. They figured out something very important.
Yeah.
It's like a lawyer. The lawyer gets paid no matter if his, most cases, no matter if his client loses or wins, you get a piece of the action.
Yeah.
And that's what they wanted to do instead of shuffling books around. And I said, the job's over. Oh. And Mark Nason, the fellow, says, well, now I know this is kind of a shock. And I'm thinking, no, it's not. This is great. I'm not sure what I'm going to do, but I'm going to do something. And he said, now if you need to talk to HR or anything. I said, no, really, I'm fine. And I got a little severance pay, I think like $10,000 or something. But
you were free.
The 3 years, I don't want to dwell too long on Alibris, but the years I worked for them, at first when they came on the scene, the hostility in the trade and in the ABAA to Alibris it was quite hilarious.
Yeah.
When you think about it, because they actually had this, several people would tell me, Alibris is just going to buy up all the books, and there are not going to be any books for the rest of us. And Weatherford used to tell me, the world is swimming in out-of-print books. There's more out-of-print books than we can ever use. And over a period of time, people calmed down. But I kept my ABA membership through all those years, but a number of people made it known that they didn't think I should serve on the board of governors while I was, which I had been. I said, I'm not sure that's a good idea. I mean, I'll resign if you want, but I think it might be a good idea to have somebody who's on the inside with that stuff.
Yeah.
Oh no, there's conflict of interest or something. So the 3 years that I was with Alibris, I probably sold about 10 books at that time.
Yeah.
But after that ended, then I went back to just kind of puttering along, and over the last 5 years in particular, I had cancer 6 years ago.
Okay.
But I was still doing stuff. But last year I got my 5-year clearance, so to speak, and I thought, well, shit, now why not try to ramp things up a little bit? I mean, I'm not going to have a shop or anything like that, but I'm going to do more shows. I'm going to just work a little harder at it. So that's kind of what I've been doing since then.
You're back.
Yeah, and
back.
I'm going to do these shows on the West Coast. And, once I drove back to the Twin Cities to do a fair there, and I might do that again. I should add that working for Alibris soured me on flying so much that I have not been on an airplane since November of 2006.
Holy smokes.
And
so drive or nothing, huh?
Or
train,
I'm looking into that. Of course, if I could take a boat, that'd be great too.
That'd be cool.
But people that start saying, oh, Taylor, there are classes you can take so you can get over your fear of flying. I said, I don't have a fear of flying. I hate it.
You're just sick of it.
I just don't want to do it, and I don't have to, so I don't. I mean, I'm not saying I never will again, but...
Okay. Well, we'll see you in St. Paul, St. Louis. See you at the fair.
Well, yeah. One of my dreams has always been
Sacramento.
to drive Interstate 90.
Yeah.
I remember being in Boston, probably the second time I was there, and I see this highway sign. I said, It said 90. And I thought, well, that's a coincidence. We have a 90 out in Seattle. And so he said, yeah, and it's the same one. So I do want to make that drive back and forth.
Oh yeah. A lot of the greats have done it, right? It's a great little track.
It is, absolutely.
So fairs, what about catalogs? What about website? What about
I don't have a website.
How do you reach everybody? How do you
Not very well these days. I have a little.
How are you gonna reach everybody?
You know, I'm still kind of thinking this through. I just spoke with one of the fellows from Bibliopolis. I said, you know, I don't have a website. Maybe I should have one, but is there a way I can have it so it's really private and I don't have to deal with everybody? So I don't know.
Websites for introverts.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I'm a very introverted extrovert.
Yeah.
I mean, when I'm happy when I'm by myself and I'm happy when I'm with people, but, you know, everybody's mad at me because I don't have a telephone in the directory or anywhere. That was the thing I learned to hate, having the big shops.
Oh,
being
yeah,
a slave
picking up
to the
that
telephone.
phone, yeah.
And voicemail.
Mm-hmm. No.
No, not for me. No, it's
So how do they find you? Email or letter? Okay.
Email, that's right.
Yeah.
So these days I do the shows. I have about a dozen regular customers, including a couple of institutions. And I post things on the ABAA trade line. Look for some this coming week or the week after.
Fresh stuff.
Yeah, February 2020, there'll be plenty. Partly because for this fair, when I packed up the car, I managed to leave behind 2 boxes of my most expensive books.
Uh-oh. It's going to be fresh stuff.
It
Watch
will be
for
fresh.
it.
And
Talk about a fresh list.
Yeah. So
you know, your arc covers the beginning, the golden age, the edge of that, the real shop, pre-internet, through the internet, deeply in the internet, at one with the internet, now excavating out.
That's a very good way to put it.
We always in these interviews ask everybody, if you were entering today, you're kind of in that game as well. You're entering today. So
Yes, and
what are you seeing for challenges, but for opportunities that are just, it's a different landscape.
well,
But it's new and it's
one thing that has definitely changed, and we talk about it all the time, is the kind of inventory that appeals to the broadest range of the buyers. Now, I've always been intrigued and delighted by odd books. In fact, in a lot of old book fair catalogs, you'll see me listed under especially of odd subjects.
Nice.
And one time for San Francisco Fair, just for fun, I listed eggplant as a specialty. And one person
Came cheap.
actually asked me, and I did have a book, fortunately.
But do you have any aubergine?
No, it's a miracle. We have eggplant here.
That's right.
And so what would I do now? I don't know. This is because I'm confused now, even with all the background in the trade. I'm still not sure I'm going to go. One thing, this E-list phenomena, I think is going to be more and more important. I don't know how to do them.
What?
I can't do it. I'm a bad student. I'm not stupid, but I can't.
I'm coming to Seattle and
Well,
have coffee with you. And
Kate Midas.
you got Kate right up there.
Kate spent a whole day with me.
Yeah.
Wonderful bookseller who someday you will see on film here too.
That's right. I'll nab her the minute she's in.
Absolutely. And I thought by the end of the day, I thought I knew. And Jesus, by the next day, I'm not kidding, I'd forgotten everything. It's like my brain had been wiped. So I'm a technophobe, I guess.
Okay. You'll do it your way.
I don't like my phone. I don't like my computer. You know, I just don't like any of that stuff. So I like shows.
Yeah.
You know, I have a couple of days or a day or 2 or 3 days to work with the public. And I've met some wonderful new people that way. One of my favorite writers I met at a Pasadena fair a year ago, who lives down here, who's published many books that I have. Pictorial social history.
Nice.
I won't say his name,
Okay.
but no, I will. Why not? Because he's a great guy. His name is Jim Hyman, and he's most famous for a book called California Crazy, which came out about 35 years ago about vernacular architecture. But you know, he's interested in the same kind of fun things that I am. So, I get to see him.
You'll find your people. Your
Right.
people will find you.
Here we've had a
Yeah.
day and a half here, and I've found a couple of new names of
Mm-hmm.
really nice people that'll be fun to, email with and
Yep.
visit with on occasion. So I'm just trying to
You're
do
building.
little pieces.
Little pieces, but sounds like pieces that have some depth,
Yeah,
that have some meaning.
and reflect what gives me pleasure.
That's what it's all about.
Yeah,
You do it your way and enjoy the process. And
I love vintage restaurant menus, and as soon as I sold one the first day, I thought, oh, good, I sold a
Okay.
menu. So
yeah,
and then I sold a bunch more after that.
well, that was your mantra.
Yeah.
You buy what vibes with you. It's going to vibe with somebody else.
There was a time, another of the amazing things in the 80s was the librarian who'd been at that Fairbanks Library that brought me in on that great collection with Frank Lloyd Wright and all these Will Bradley press books. Oh, Jesus, amazing stuff. Duplicates of everything. He relocated to Thousand Oaks, California. And I thought, well, shoot, we'll still be friends, but, it wasn't so crude to say, well, there goes one of my meal tickets, but
Yeah.
that is what I thought. So his name is Marvin Smith, and I consider him one of my great mentors. He passed away about 2 years ago. And so we're still in touch, and one day he's in his office at Thousand Oaks. He calls me up. He says, I was going to ask you something. Do you know anybody in the trade that could really be good about stuff related to show business? Yeah.
You think?
That's me. And I said, well, sure, that's me. What kind of stuff? Radio and television. And again, I thought, well, I'm good at that stuff because I know the music, I know the drama, I know the news, I know all that stuff. I'm interested in American social history of particularly the first part of the 20th century. So he tells me, well, the foundation here, which is very wealthy, we're trying to develop some kind of special collection with Thousand Oaks Library. And we don't want to do movies, because everybody does movies down here. We don't want to do this, we don't do that. We got a little Western Americana. We want to do something different. And so we came up with radio and television, American radio and television history. So for 4 years, I sent them so much stuff. I mean, it was a lot of sales, a lot of money.
A lot of meal tickets.
Back then, I would sit in my booth at a book fair.
Yeah.
It's like people now, they bring me menus to sell me for $5 or $10. Back then, they'd say, oh, Taylor, I have the radio stuff, I have the TV stuff. They were flocking to me. And again, I would just wrap up the stuff, ship it to the library. 10 days later, they paid me. And that climaxed, it's probably, that's the right word. I helped broker the archive of Rudy Valley, one of the legendary people of show business who had more comebacks than anybody you can think of. And we tried to negotiate with Valley himself. Didn't work. He'd really gotten goofy. He died. 3 weeks after he died, his widow contacted the guy that had been helping them. To tell that whole story would be about a 2-hour tape.
Whoa.
And it would partly be X-rated, and anyway. But again, this is a thing that I just fell into, and I really didn't have to work very hard. I mean, it was fun, and it was stuff that I was so fascinated with, and I just loved to handle. And Valley himself had saved every scrap from his show business career.
Wow.
The first fan letters he'd ever gotten when he was on radio in 1928. It was like people didn't even know how to write a fan letter. But he'd saved them.
New world.
Yeah, it was.
Well, I'm really glad you saved all your fan letters and your stories. I don't know if you heard the arc there. You were describing. I feel like yourself in that. You're Mr. Book Fair show business. The basic thing I'm getting and hearing is do what you love, and everything you touch seems to be golden. So, from the cab to the shop, here's to another million.
Thank you. I start out every day figuring I'm going to have some fun.
Yeah.
And honestly, I'm rarely disappointed.
There you go.
In fact, I'm never, even when I don't have fun,
All right. Well, hopefully we all can keep our days looking like that.
Well, I'm hoping to. I'm hoping
and many
to,
more for you.
and for you too and everybody
Thanks.
else. So I'm having a great time.
Awesome. Well, we're having a great time with you. Thanks,
Good.
Taylor.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Pleasure.